At any rate, we have another Paul Harris Fellow, and she happens to be in the room with us today. Grandma made sure that she got down here, and I want y'all to look around, not only at the new Paul Harris Fellow, but I want you to look at the daughter of this girl, because Connie's been here many times, and I don't believe I've ever seen the daughter. But boy, she can't deny this one. That's I think Connie might have looked that way maybe in that year or time. This Paul Harris Fellow thing is the threshold of Rotary. It is what the Rotary Foundation does, and this being part of it, this exemplifies $1,000 that's been given in her name that will go for humanitarian programs, and that includes literacy and also a few other things, but mainly clean water right now seems to be the big thing throughout the world. Is somehow or another we're going to stamp that one out too, or have some clean water for everybody, and that's potable water to drink. And hopefully we will get that old polio thing completely out of our system one of these days too. And that happens to go along with all the other communicable diseases that are out there too. So this exemplifies part of that gets done. Connie, would you bring Nora forward? This is your certificate, my lady. Whoops. Not so much for that thing. Okay. This belongs to you. Thank you very much. And we thank your grandmother. And there is a pen that you can get to. Okay? All right.
We have with us today Dr. Debbie Below, and Dr. Below is the Vice President in charge of Enrollment Management and Student Success. She wears the third big hat, called the Dean of Students up at the university, and Debbie has been active at the university since 2002 on her second track, and I believe she said she came in 1986 and left for a few years, but Debbie does a wonderful job in her department. And she's got to stand over and watch the growth of the university. And so let's give a warm Rotary welcome to Dr. Debbie Below.
Well, they're making me look real official here, so like that. Well, thank you, Steve, and thank you, Derek, for inviting me out. I do have a handout that I'm going to go ahead and distribute. Let you begin taking a look at that. Thank you. Steve invited me to talk about the growth that we've experienced at the university, and to really, more than anything, answer your questions about where the university might be headed in the future. I love talking about the university. It's my passion. I came here from Washington, Missouri, as he said, back in the mid-'80s as a college student. And I kind of like to always begin with how I got here. And I didn't know about Cape Girardeau. Now, Washington, Missouri, for those of you who've been there, is a lot like Cape Girardeau. It's a river community, very friendly place. But I hadn't heard of Cape Girardeau as a 17 or 18-year-old. And so I have to say that there were 4 people, and I can remember all 4 of those conversations, who encouraged me to look at this university. And the last one, of course, was when I came and visited the campus. And with each one of those individuals, they were warm, welcoming, and just made me feel like this is a place where I might be able to be a special person and thrive. And I hope that we still provide that same experience to students who are looking at our university today. So for me, this has just been a place where I really became the person that I am, and I feel that strength that we provide to other students at the university. I do think we're different and special, and I'm glad we're right here in Southeast Missouri. Now, we have a very diverse student body, and it's a growing student body, and the data that I've given you begins with a chart from the Missouri Department of Higher Education, and that chart shows the growth over the last 5 years at Southeast in comparison to other Missouri institutions. And you'll notice on here that for the most part, we're one of the fastest growing universities in the state of Missouri. When you compare us to, other than Mizzou and I think Missouri S&T, you'll see that we have just about the highest growth rate. This chart is what we call FTE, or full-time equivalent. So the number of students who are taking a full load on average. So we're pleased that that growth rate over the last 5 years has been 16.6%. Now you'll notice that there is a slowing enrollment growth in the state of Missouri and really nationwide. Steve talked to me about that as I walked in, and we're going to talk about that too before I finish the presentation. So last year our growth rate was quite a bit smaller at just 1.3%. That still beat the 4-year public average, which was just 0.4%. There are trends that are affecting that. The first one being that the high school class size is smaller. We're definitely seeing that this year, and we will continue to see that for the next few years. Now, yesterday I attended the United Way CEO Kickoff Luncheon, and I enjoyed that. And one of the neatest parts was actually sitting next to somebody who works in business and industry here in town, and I said, well, what's your role with your company? She said, my role is to look for ways to help our company become more effective. Every part of the production stream, you know, from human resources to the amount of time it takes to get the product out the door to the cost effectiveness. How many of you know what I'm talking about? You're doing that in your same work environments. We're doing that at the university as well. Today, most universities are tuition driven. We have less than state appropriations to operate, and so our income, the majority of which comes from tuition and fees, obviously depends upon enrollment today. There are other reasons that we should grow, and we're going to talk about that as well. But I share with you here this chart that shows you how we've been growing to give you some idea of how students are changing and how this may affect those students that you see coming into the community as they mature and grow and look for job opportunities. So the first is how they are choosing their majors. So I've shown you here the last 10 years, where we were 10 years ago and where we are today. And you'll see these are the top 10 to 12 academic departments in terms of growth. So that means when you look at this chart very quickly, the thing that jumps out for me is healthcare. Many more students who are seeking opportunities, whether that be related to communication disorders, working in the health field, the human services field of criminal justice and sociology. I had to make sure Joe's department was on here, Joe Pujol, although they said despite Joe's leadership, health, human performance, and recreation has grown substantially. But I work with Joe, and I have to give him some credit for that. He does a fabulous job. But throughout this, I think that you do see that there are trends. We also see many more students today majoring in agriculture, and they understand the value of an agribusiness degree, and we've taken that down to our regional campuses. So again, it's about diversifying and making sure that we have what students need today. That's how the university has been growing. Change in total enrollment by ethnicity. We understand that the world is changing, and we are reaching out and making sure that we are available to the students who want to access an affordable, quality education, and they can do that right here in Southeast Missouri, despite where they came from. So we have students enrolled at Southeast from 45 states, and today 53 foreign countries. You'll see our international enrollment, specifically top 7% this past year. That is not just a trend at Southeast Missouri State University. That is a trend throughout the state and specifically throughout the nation. Each year we're seeing an increase of, between 50,000 and 100,000 more international students coming to the United States to study. It's pretty interesting numbers. This year, fall 2013, I would expect our African American enrollment probably to top 1,000. I think Hispanic enrollment will probably double from where it was in 2003. Our freshman class has a few more Hispanic students. That is a very slow growing population for us in Southeast Missouri, simply because of really truly the demographics of this area, but it is growing, as you can tell. And then other enrollment highlights. Again, about diversification. I think of Southeast Missouri State University as a traditional university. We have, 12, 13 residence halls now. We have one opening this year and another one next year. We've been housing students over at Candlewood, as you know. We won't need to do that this year. Hopefully we'll be able to offer a few more private rooms. You can only imagine what it's like to put 3,000 students in a place where everyone has to have a roommate and nobody can switch because there's no rooms. Do you all get, I mean, just imagine what that's like. So I'm happy to have just a little bit of space this year where we can move some students around. This new residence hall that's going to open in just a couple of weeks is just fabulous. And then the River Campus, we have plans to open a residence hall there. You'll see that theater and dance and music have grown substantially. Art was right just under them. They just didn't make the cut for this report. But we've, gosh, easily more than doubled in our School of Visual Performing Arts enrollments as a result of the River Campus opening. But we do have students who don't choose us because they ask specifically, could I live there? And of course, we don't have a residence hall there. So we think that that's going to help us even more. Illinois. We are relying more on Illinois students to bolster the enrollment at the university. So you can see 10 years ago, that was just under 700. This year, that will be probably right at 1,000 students from the state of Illinois. I would tell you, though, when you see that Mizzou has grown, and they're the fastest growing, probably, institution in the state, this year they will have 1,000 freshmen from the state of Illinois. And that's how they've grown. Probably 5 or 6 years ago, that was 200 to 300 freshmen from the state of Illinois. So when you see universities growing, know that in almost all cases, they are crossing state borders and bringing in international students, and then diversifying the way they offer their courses, which brings us to the next line on our report. Today, you may have noticed it on the news this morning, we have more than 700 students who are taking their courses completely online at the university. And surprising to me, I had no idea, and I asked a group of our employees at the beginning of the summer, how many of our students take at least one online course? If I hadn't put this here, you probably would have guessed a much smaller number too. They were saying 500, 1,000, 2,000, almost 7,000 students. Not because we're forcing it, not because it's the only way we offer it, but we put an online course out there, and that's what they're interested in. I don't have the specific data with me, but I would guess that easily 70 to 80% of our students are probably trying to work and go to school. And online courses will help them get there a little bit quicker. There's also data that shows that they are taking a higher credit load because of that as well. So often we see schools who say, we're trying to figure out how to make our enrollment grow. It hasn't grown. One of the first things, not that we're not giving advice to anybody else about that, but we'll look and say, how many classes are they offering online? And it's usually probably about 20% of what we're doing. So we are growing because of this diversification. The new pocket of enrollment that we're interested in is the military and veteran population. Today, a veteran has more benefits available and a more diverse set of benefits, as well as the ability to transfer those benefits to a family member. We have seen that our military families are being very targeted by for-profit institutions. I can't remember what the number was, but it's probably like 70% of all of the benefits are going to just this very small handful of institutions. We've got to get better at that in the four-year public sector. We have to remember that the student population today will be so much more diverse than it was when all of us were in school. And that includes providing our military and veteran families with the opportunity to earn a degree. With online education, many can start while they're in the military, and we see that happening today. So we opened an Office of Military and Veteran Services this year. You have also attached to this handout, it's the color piece on the back, that talks about our new tuition rate for out-of-state families. We have, I think there were about 240 to 250 freshmen registered for this coming fall semester from the state of Illinois. 44 or so of those are eligible for this veterans benefit. So we've seen a nice healthy bump in our enrollment from Illinois coming up this fall, and a little over, gosh, I think it was about 15 to 20% of that we're going to be eligible for that benefit, which is really nice to see. The last thing I'll mention in terms of diversification is the high school students, and that brings me to the very last part of the presentation. We're offering at the university this year a number of high school courses, a number of college courses online to high school students. So all of us are probably familiar with traditional dual credit, students at their high school taking a class taught by the English teacher and they're getting college credit for it at the same time. However, there's a trend, and it's happening all over the state, probably all over the nation, I can't say for sure, but for sure here in the state of Missouri, where we have teachers who are going on for the master's degree, but they're not getting it in their area of discipline. And that means that they might end up with a counseling degree or an education specialist degree, something in the leadership management area to prepare them possibly to be a principal, but they aren't prepared to teach English, and you need to have a master's in that level to teach a college course. So with this online piece, we are seeing more students taking dual credit courses, and that's a great thing. So hopefully this year, more than 800 area high school students will earn college credit while they're in high school, which shortens the time to the degree, which brings me to my very last point. I provided you with a handout from a report by the Lumina Foundation. There's a national goal, and all of us really need to probably become more aware of this, and it's one that sort of just started hitting me in the last probably 6 months to a year. The goal is that by the year 2025, 60% of our population will hold a degree of some sort. Educational credentials. That could be a certificate, an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, master's, doctorate, whatever it is. And that's because by that same year, 2025, 60% of the jobs that are available to our population will require those credentials. We are very far underneath that right now. We have a long way to go. And I don't have these numbers memorized yet, but they are on your handout. You can see on the first page of this Missouri handout, back in 2008, we were just around 35%. That is starting to inch up a bit. But let's see, to reach 60% attainment by 2025, we need an additional 486,000 degrees in the state of Missouri. So let's just say Missouri chooses not to pay attention to that goal. You know, play the what if. What if in 2025 we are still at 35 to 40% as a state? Can you just kind of speculate? What happens to our business and industry sector in our communities? Any guesses?
It leaves.
Yeah, they go where the jobs are. And we see that happening now. We have an office in the St. Louis area, and that's been a wonderful partnership for us because 40% of the students who come to Southeast Missouri every year to go to school are from the greater St. Louis area. For us to continue to attract students from a large region, we need to make sure that we're connecting back to their communities. But at the same time, I would venture to guess some of you know people from our local community who've gone to work in the St. Louis area as well. So we now have 3 full-time staff working in St. Louis in a St. Louis outreach office. One just linked us with the St. Louis Regional Chamber of Commerce. St. Louis is the 19th largest city in the United States, and they have the 14th highest population with these credentials. Okay, but they have a goal to be in the top 10 by 2025. And they've invited St. Louis area universities to be part of this conversation along with business and industry to come up with solutions for veterans, for high school students to get credit while they're still in high school, for more online programs, for high school dropouts, you name it. Every population, they're trying to work around this to help with this movement. We're fortunate in that through this partnership, they've also invited Southeast to be a part of that. So we're the only university outside the St. Louis region in the state who's participating in these meetings on a monthly basis. So we're pleased to be a part of that. I'm curious if you have thoughts about what we could be doing. What more could we do? Somebody asked me yesterday, is it really important that you continue to grow? I don't know. I guess it's okay if we would be smaller. I mean, we could easily accept that. But when I look at this number, none of us should be satisfied with declining when we see how important it is that we provide more credentialed individuals for your businesses. But I would like to open up, just curious, I'd love to get in front of a group and see what your thoughts are on these topics and what you need from us to continue to strengthen what you do.
Do you find in the statistics which I haven't looked at, but if you don't have jobs in this area, your graduates are going to go elsewhere. But you got to have highly educated workforce for the jobs to come here. Do you see it working both ways?
That's the exact same question they had at the meeting that I attended at the St. Louis Regional, because it became a question about tax benefits to have companies locate there to produce the jobs. Their argument was they're not going to come here when they look at the demographics of the area and the number of available people. So there's this back and forth happening, I think.
Yeah. Talk about what agriculture has done with their programs. I think some of the people would be interested to hear what they've done at the regional campuses.
Right, so we see the majority of our students today, well, plant and soil science is a big part of our agriculture program, but we are now teaching those as 4-year completion programs at all of the regional campuses. The rice breeding program is an innovative part of our agriculture program. When I hear the faculty in that program talk about the industry. And I travel with them in the St. Louis area talking about agriculture. And then high school counselors respond and say, well, why would my kid from Chesterfield major in agriculture? They didn't grow up on a farm. They have no clue why you'd major in agriculture. And very quickly, the faculty are able to turn that around and talk about the jobs. They say, well, where is it's the Danforth Foundation, right? Or the the Danforth Research, okay, that you know what I'm talking about. So, or Monsanto. You have students at your high school working there. But think about what kind of background they need to work there. It's not necessarily growing up on a farm that would prepare them for that. He also made the comment, many of the bankers in southeast Missouri where we're located, this is again standing in the Chesterfield area, had an agribusiness degree because they're making a lot of land and farm loans. They probably didn't grow up on farms themselves. And quickly they could begin to see that connection. So I've heard the figure that 1 in 7 jobs are related to the field of agriculture in one way or another. And we've seen some outstanding, specifically internship opportunities that are helping our students land jobs in those fields.
When I went to SEMO, my first year was $80 a semester. I think final year was 120.
Yeah.
What is it now?
More. I don't actually have that memorized. We're a little over $200 a credit hour, probably closer to about $230 or so. We tell a student who's going to live on campus at community-style housing this year, it'll be slightly over $14,000. And if they're in suite-style housing, it's probably closer to about $15,500. It's gotten expensive.
Debbie, what areas, as far as in the education departments, I should say education, but of the departments at school, who's declining? In other words, are we seeing any declines as far as?
Our overall, I didn't see substantial declines anywhere. There's areas that are a little more flat. For a while, colleges and businesses throughout the state declined the last 2 to 3 years with the change in the economy. This year, we're seeing a healthy increase there, so I'm happy to see that. Education is also a field with the economy the last few years. What happened was the teachers chose not to retire. So incoming high school students got that message. There's not going to be any jobs. Well, it's cyclical like everything else. Now they're going to retire. Now there will be jobs, so I anticipate that's going to pick back up. But that has definitely slowed as well. I don't know that they've declined, but it's been fairly flat.
How about cybersecurity, that being a new department? How's that gone over?
Well, it's huge. We went from, we're only on our 2nd year, and this year we had the last fall. So last fall I think we had 73 majors in the program, so we'll see where we open this year. That program has a lot of room to grow, and we're looking, and we've done very little marketing of the program. So right now we're talking about possibly bolstering that a bit.
I just heard on the news this morning where they said universities were not encouraging enough students to go into computers and technology. And that's what the business world is telling the university world.
It is. Well, and I think that's probably on here. So our industrial and engineering technology area, cybersecurity is embedded there. So you'll see that 10 years ago that enrollment was 437, and that has certainly picked up over the last decade. And that we are known we've now embedded the School of Polytechnic Studies into what we call the College of Science and Math. So it's now the College of Science, Technology, and Agriculture. Primarily because we wanted the words technology and agriculture tied to science, but also to get more prominence in our material so people understood the importance of agriculture as a possible major. Yeah.
Debbie, do you think these nice increases enjoyed by a lot of our state universities are part of the economy? So private schools, are they coming down a little bit? So I can't afford St. Louis shoe, so I'll go to Missouri.
There were an awful lot of shifts. Yeah, we saw some of that. And it'll be interesting now that the economy's recovering a bit. But there's also a trend, and Steve asked me about this, are we hitting, I'm going to call it a tipping point. That wasn't the word he used, it's the word I used, that college costs have hit a point where it's getting too expensive. There's shifting happening all over the place. We have an awful lot of families where both parents went to Mizzou and they're touring our university. When I was an admission counselor 20 years ago, that didn't happen. It happens every day. But we probably have students who can't afford to be here based on the cost I just shared that are going elsewhere too. Lots of shifting, I think.
I'd ask Debbie the question about, we're putting so many of these fees on the backs of the students. such as, you know, if we build a new dorm, you know, they're paying so much more, you know, per credit hour. Well, what happens when the number of students start to decrease? How are the universities going to deal with trying to make sure they can cover all their expenses?
Yeah, my response would be, we'll handle it the same way the private sector does, and that you would, you know, you adjust what you're doing, you adjust your pricing strategies. So that's something we talk about every other week.
Or you
in
pull
one
it
form or
Detroit.
another. Well, I don't. We're pretty far from a Detroit, thankfully. But
Good.
no, we're in very good shape as a university financially. I think all of us understand, you know, the leadership at Southeast and our president's background, and that has prepared us well for the future.
Is academic open up again?
It will be open at homecoming. So come visit. There'll be a big celebration.
Beautiful.
And then we'll start moving in. I did get to walk in about a week ago. Gary Lucy was down. Anybody know who Gary Lucy is? From my hometown of Washington. I knew him when I was a kid. I just didn't know he was a student here. But yeah, but he's thinking about a painting, so we got a chance to walk through with him. It's beautiful. It actually looks like it should look, if I could say it that way. The wood is the original. It's just the floor. Everybody said, is a tile floor there? Yes. Did you keep the same wood colors? Yes. When you built new stuff, does it look like the old stuff? I can't tell the difference.
That's where I spent a lot of time when I was in college.
It's beautiful. Yeah. So it'll be open for the entire community over October 27th, 28th, something like that, or 25th, 26th.
Going through all the data, you're looking for more students, basically to increase enrollment and things like that. In all of your documentation here, I see nothing about non-traditional, other than military. To me, that would be a huge avenue to approach.
Yeah, well, it definitely is. And so our regional campuses now enroll probably between 12 and 1,300 students a year. Kennett, Malden, Sykeston, which is very much non-traditional. We have seen a major influx in non-traditional students, especially the last 3 years. It went down last year. It's going to go down again this year as the economy has changed. So opening that Office of Military and Veteran Services was very important to us in terms of helping non-traditional students. That accessibility at the regional campus is very important in that way, and online. And online has grown so rapidly, and so much of that is our non-traditional student base.
How's Dempster Fall doing?
How's Dempster? It better be open, because we're going to teach some classes there. I think it's doing okay. I've just heard carpet replacement and some stuff in the atrium, you know, needs to be replaced. But not a lot, but I'm really not in that conversation too
Inside
much.
the building?
Yeah, mostly on top. But the carpet replacement, I think, primarily because of smoke.
And touching what Ryan was saying about non-traditional students, in reaching that 60% by 2025, do you feel there's going to be a big, I wouldn't say marketing push, but a big push to get those who aren't degreed, who may be
Yes.
working comfortably but not, you know?
Well, 100% of this 60%, to get to that 60% is going to be non-traditional students and high school students who aren't going to college right now, which means we aren't prepared for this, to be honest. You know, we do a nice job with tutoring. We do a nice job with providing disability services, but if you come in and we anticipate you might have a disability, this is most colleges. It's up to you to go get the testing. Well, that's expensive. Well, if we need to teach to you for you to be successful, we're going to have to find a way to offer that service. So services will become more expensive. Financial aid is going to have to be there because we're talking about students who don't have $15,000. Well, that's to live on campus, but $7,000 to pay the tuition and fees and books. So I think all of us feel just like business and industry. I don't want to say that we're any different. We're all trying to adjust to what I would call this new world where education will be required if we're going to move ahead as a country, and where technology will be a part of it.
You're talking about public education, but less and less public money goes to education, and it's more and more the individual has to fund it.
That's right.
Why do we still call it public?
Well, because we have a lot more federal and state requirements to follow in order to get that up. And I'm not kidding about that. So for the funding that we are going to get this year for the first time, it's based on our performance. So performance-based funding will be even more prevalent today, and I'm reading about other things that will become part of our performance funding in the future. Are we out of time, Steve?
We're real close, but
Okay.
I just want to ask you, in your student success area, this deal with student debt. In other words, are you all counseling students today on how much debt they should take on for a given profession that they might want to enter? And are you all concerned about that?
We're terribly concerned about it. We watch our default rate in comparison to other schools and all that kind of stuff. We have a default prevention grant program. I ran that for many years. We do financial literacy education. But to be honest, I don't think we're doing enough in that area. Unless we could sit down and, I sat with a family member, my family member last week one day with his mother talking about college. I said, I want you to do this without using loans the first 2 years. She said, well, that's what we were going to do. No. I said, you can do this if you start at Sykeston because, you know, whatever. I had a plan worked out, but everybody just thinks, no, that's what you do. It scares me a little bit. When we talk to families in our financial aid programs, when I did those programs, that I would say, you are your child's financial counselor. They can take out a loan, a sizable loan, without you knowing it. They can have it deposited to their checking account without you knowing it, the refund. You need to understand the terms of these loans and be a counselor for your student. You as a parent, the best counselor.
I work in the finance industry. I run the mortgage division for a bank here. One of the major things that I see as a problem is student loan debt, because you have people that have $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $130,000 worth of student loan debt, but they're making $30,000 a year.
Yes.
And when they go in to buy a house, guess what? It's not happening.
I know.
So I think a lot more emphasis needs to be placed in looking at that, because when these people get out, they throw up their hands and they quit.
I agree.
So I don't know what else to say, but there has to be something else, because they have no idea what they're getting.
Yeah, you know, there's this, what goes through my mind is that we now require a career assessment of every freshman in their first semester course. So they have an idea, so they can get to their degree quicker because they would get better planned. But next to all of those career things that they would be good at, those jobs, are the salaries associated with those. Then we have this chart that says if you borrow this much, you need this salary to repay it. We've now printed that in our freshman orientation handbook, and we pointed out, if you make $40,000 a year, you can only afford to repay $22,000. You need to go and look at your career assessment, but we're going to have to force that in many different directions, and then again, finding a way to partner with the parents. But thank you for that, because we need to make that more of a priority than we already are. Thank you.